I don't think this thing should be because,
No waiting, yeah, join with video.
yeah, I
but
said
You're
that, but
waiting to let that in.
yeah, but here's Dan McCree was there.
Hello.
Hi, Nat.
Hi, Melissa.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. I got in.
Good. That's great.
Well, thank you for the help.
Yeah, no problem.
No, dialed it, came right in.
All right.
However, I'm doing it on my landline, so I don't have a visual part of the meeting.
Okay.
I think it's because I have a Samsung 5, which is elderly. I probably have to invest in a new one.
Nat, it's 101 if you want to get started.
Hello?
Yes, sir. It's 101 if you want to get started, sir.
Well, are all the people in that are supposed to be in?
We need to call the meeting to order and then we can take a roll call.
Okay. Call the meeting to order.
Okay.
Take a roll call.
Sure. Nat LeGrand,
Yes.
Larry Walsky, Jeff Stout, who's just getting ready to join us now. Bill Jenks will be absent today. Catherine Lentz.
Yes.
Steve Bynofsky
Present.
and Barbara Reeser.
Here. Oh, what's going on there?
Melissa, do you have a quorum?
We do have a quorum, yep.
Okay, Nat, you have a quorum and your next stop would be to reorganization of your
Reorganization.
committee. Yes, sir.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion of who should be the new chairman?
From you now.
Something's
Should
wrong
I
there.
keep my chair?
I'm sorry, I could not hear that. Hello?
Are you there, Nat?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you're good.
Would
the
somebody like to?
For the committee members,
Excuse-
if you're happy with Nat being your chairman, I just need someone to make a motion or a motion for that effect.
Okay.
Hello?
You on mute? You all right?
Yeah, but get away. I'm gonna have to.
Would someone like to make a motion to reappoint Nat as the chair of the Park and Shade Tree Commission for 2021, please?
I will. Jeff Stout.
Thank you, sir. We need a second to that too, please, if someone is available. Someone from the committee like to make a second on that motion?
Are there only two people? This is Jeff Stout. Are there only two people in this meeting?
No, there's some other folks, sir. Barbara, would you care to make a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay. So you have a motion and a second, Nat. You just call for the vote.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Congratulations, Nat.
Okay, well, thank you for your support. Okay, public comment. All public comments shall be related to the subject matter jurisdiction of the Borough Council, Committee, or Board conducting the virtual public meeting and shall be limited to matters of public concerns, official action, or deliberations that are or may come before the Borough Council, Committee, or Board. I guess we need to approve that.
No, I don't think. I think that's just an understanding. I think.
Oh,
Are there
okay.
any public people there? Is there anybody from the public that wants to say anything? I don't think so.
All right. Then let's go on to deer density survey. Has everybody received a copy of that
Yes.
from
Yes.
USDA?
Yes.
Well, anyway,
I have.
on page 3, or no, I guess there's more than that. There's a section called recommendations. I think that's probably what we should discuss here, whether we're in favor of doing what they're saying should be the recommendations. So I'll throw it out to anybody that would like to comment on that.
Not having that in front of me, Nat, what are the basic recommendations? Are there multiple? I think there was.
Would you like me to read them?
Yeah, or just summarize them. I think one is culling the herd, isn't it? Taking out
Yes.
some deer by shooting.
Yes. Well, it's two things. It's culling the herd, and the bigger the herd is, the more likely it is that you'll have cases of Lyme disease. And they're
Right.
saying that, first of all, we should document all that, including incidents of cars and deer having a collision. And if I read it right, then after a period of time, we need to go back to Wildlife Services and tell them what we've done and ask them for new recommendations.
Have there been
Okay.
accidents with cars and deer here in the borough?
Yes, but I don't have that on the information that I've been given.
This is Jim. I'd say depends on the time of
Hello.
year. Say we
Thank
average
you, Melissa.
to a month.
Anybody hear me? Don't tell me I have it.
If I read that report correctly, it didn't seem out of the normal.
Right.
Yes, it's higher than
Hello?
apparently what they
Anybody? No?
expected.
Shoot.
Is this a specific recommendation that we recommend they start shooting deer? Is that what we're hearing here?
No, sir. There's a bunch of
No.
steps before you get into that.
Yeah, that's down the road.
Okay,
They found 53 deer the first night and 39 deer the second night. And that was done February 23rd and February 24th.
okay,
And that was the deer density estimated per square mile was 89 the first night and 68 the second night.
all right.
And they
So
go
we
on
have
to
a problem.
explain how they figured deer density.
So we have a problem, and this recommendation is, so it's not specifically starting to cull the herd. What are we supposed to do?
Council would like to know your recommendations as to what from your committee.
Well,
as to,
I feel that we should follow the recommendations that they made. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but I'm trying to get some input here from other people.
absolutely.
Have there been
Well-
many, this is Barbara, has there been a lot of feedback from residents about damage being done by the deer?
There's a few.
Well, this is more than a few. I mean, that's a little bit of an understatement. I mean,
Well,
there are people who are,
The last time we actually talked about it, there were a few people that were objecting to what the deer were doing.
there's the whole neighborhood on High Road is out in force against the deer. I mean, their yards,
Okay.
they can't grow anything. The area in the meadows where I live, I mean, they've destroyed ewes all around the air conditioning unit during the middle of winter. You can't plant any flowers because they're going to eat them all. Then you've got the area across the swale from the meadows, which is Reading Boulevard. My wife was just over visiting with Betsy Powers, who's in the 1700 block, and she said the neighbors over there are all upset. I mean, people are upset because they can't have gardens. I mean, there are too many deer,
Sure.
folks. And we've
You
kicked
put-
this around forever and ever.
You put a
The
lot of work
my
into growing the
recommendation
plants.
my recommendation would be that we've got to start culling the herd. The sooner the better. Whatever steps need to be taken to make that happen quicker rather than later, or to have council try and avoid the issue, I'm against. I'm for it happening quickly.
This is Catherine Lentz, and I'd like to chime in as a resident of High Road and a member of the committee. Yes, there are way too many deer along High Road, and that's just a personal observation. I don't know what the actual right number is supposed to be, but my concern is the number of deer, but it's also what they're doing to the parkland. There is not time for anything to regenerate because the deer are feeding on it, and as a result, the parkland as it was when we moved in 17 years ago looks quite different. In other words, new growth just does not have time to happen
Generate.
because the deer eat it as soon as it pops up. So soon we're not going to have wooded areas. We're going to have deforested areas because the trees and plants can't grow back. So I too am in support of culling or thinning the herd.
Would you like to make a recommendation that we follow the recommendations of wildlife?
Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt, this is John Woodward, a
Sure.
council person. And I used to be on the Charles Evans Cemetery Board, and we culled the herd out there. We only had 15 deer and they got 14 of them. Well, that's good enough. But It costs $1,000 a deer to cull the herd, just for
Mhm.
So what are you saying, John? You don't want to cull the herd?
Well, I'm just saying it's going to be expensive if we cull the herd. That's all, Jeff.
I think sooner or later, council has to step up and solve this problem, John. They've been pussyfooting around it for years.
It may be expensive to cull the herd for the borough as a whole, but think how expensive it is for each individual family who has to continually replace the plant material and it's not as if we're at a set number of finite deer and we're not going to get any. For deer, these deer are repopulating faster than we can count.
Yeah.
So it's not like the problem's going to solve itself and go away.
I would agree with all
Furthermore,
that.
I would imagine you could find people who would be very willing to come and get rid of deer for $0.
Yeah, but that's
I don't want
illegal.
that.
You gotta stay within the law, and that's why I feel that we should go back to them and tell them that we would like to take their recommendations and that we would like to put it on the fast track and see what they come back with.
This is Barbara. John, did that solve the problem out of Charles Evans? Did they not come back from other areas or come in there?
We did it, and then shortly thereafter, I was off the board. My term was up, and the difference we have here is at Charles Evans, it was fenced in the city.
Mhm.
At the borough of Wyomissing, they run up and down Wyomissing Creek, and if we call
Right.
the herd, they'll come back. There'll be new ones that come. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying it's not going to be the fix that everyone thinks it's going to be. So.
Well, it's going to certainly help, John. And $1,000 is not necessarily. There may be ways to cut that back, depending upon who we get and how we do it. But certainly, the borough has the money for a once in a long time event to do this. I mean, the reserve funds of the borough are enormous. I mean, they're like what, $7-8 million bucks.
Correct.
I mean, sure, we can find $15,000 to take out 15 deer, although I really suspect it's not going to cost us $1,000 a deer, but that may be. But look, fast track it, say what you will. I think we as a board have to come out strongly that the sooner this deer herd is thinned, the better it is for us, however the borough wants to go about it.
Yeah, but there are people out there that don't want to cull the herd.
Yes, and then that's why people run for public office, to make tough decisions. You can't let minority groups control the situation. Look, you got to make the decision about what you think is right. And it's right to cull this herd. It's not good for the deer. Some of them don't look so good. I mean, maybe we're just waiting till they get wasting disease. But there are plenty of people who are upset by it. There are plenty of people who get Lyme disease going through that park, which is
Well, we didn't even talk about Lyme disease, and I think that's the most important issue.
It certainly is a big issue, Nat. There's no question about it.
Well, Jeff, some may argue that you're the minority group.
Yes, may I please say a couple of words? It's Adrian Jadick. I understand, and I really feel for the people who have damage, and the deer also come up here, and I understand we also have wildlife issues. There are a few things that I wanted to suggest. First of all, I agree that with Mr. Woodward on this case, that I feel that this is more a minority that has, and we have to consider this. But because people in Berkshire Heights, people they don't have this problem. But in any case, so what I was trying to suggest is, first of all, can we work together with other municipalities around? I'm sure that this problem is not just ours. Maybe we can find a way. The other thing is, can we, and I think we have to look increasingly into this option. Can we create a fund where people can contribute so we do not spread this cost over people, over the taxes of people who, can't afford this. Those properties in the park are wealthy properties. I'm sure they can contribute a little bit to ease at least the burden on the taxpayer. We have to consider that many of our residents are not affected by the deer. It's mainly the large properties around the park. And I think that we need to be more creative here than just say, okay, cut the check and be done with this because we don't like it.
Well, we're not at that point yet. We need to get the recommendations from Wildlife Services, and they might have some answers to those questions.
I understand. I'm sorry, I came in late. I didn't hear the entire conversation, so I might have missed it. But I think that, the things that I propose make sense, and I think we have to look at it. I don't know exactly what the report says and how many deer, what the population, how big the population is. So I really don't know.
Well, it's 6 or 7 pages, and I think everybody should read it so we're all on the same page.
Correct. I didn't get a copy. I don't know. Yeah.
Why don't we do this? Why doesn't everybody read the recommendations and phone in your vote to Melissa, who will record it as to whether we're in favor with proceeding with the recommendations, so that we'll all go on record. But this is not a new problem, folks. This has been around for years, and the herd is just getting bigger and bigger. And anybody who looks at it from a common sense standpoint knows it's not healthy for the deer, and it's not healthy for the community. And it's certainly, segueing off Catherine's point, it certainly isn't doing the park any benefits, because you've got a mature parkland over there, and if you can't grow younger shrubs, plants, it's going to go to the dogs, so to speak.
Yep.
So I suggest we follow Matt's lead and read these recommendations and phone in to Melissa where we stand on them.
Hi, everybody. This is Michelle Bear, the Assistant Borough Manager. You can't phone in a vote for a recommendation. You have to do that in a public meeting forum. So you either need to take a vote today, or you need to table your vote and any action on this item until your next meeting.
This is Barbara. I have the recommendations in front of me, and some of these things will take you going on and on and on, like documenting the calls regarding deer-related damage, consider tracking Lyme disease rates by year in the borough, adjust deer damage management, or a good one, I think, is establish goals for deer management, considering allowing archery hunting is one of the recommendations. Continue to do yearly deer density surveys. Well, that could go on and on too. So, do we want to implement something in particular for deer damage management?
Well, that's a good point, Barbara. I mean, a lot of these things are, as you say, going to postpone. So maybe we just need a motion that says we are on record as a committee to ask the borough to proceed as quickly as possible to reduce the size of this herd.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I certainly will.
I'll give you a second. Hello?
Yep.
I think
I move that as a committee, we recommend to the borough that they move full speed ahead to reduce the size of the deer herd in the park and take any steps necessary to make that happen.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody else out there?
Well, take those against.
Is anyone opposed?
Apparently not.
Well, let's do it then. Melissa, do we have that down correctly as in the form of a motion?
Correct.
Okay. All right, then the next item. Is there anybody that can speak about the winter plans or tree department activities, diseases, insects, and the Centennial Circle planning?
This is Jim. I'll just give you a few tree items.
Okay.
You all know Dan McCrenna, who's in on the meeting, is our new Parks and Recreation Director. He used to work for the tree department. So since he left the department in December, you know, we've been leaf picking in the fall and snow plowing in the winter. And the tree department is down to a two-man department, so I can't report on a lot of things. They've basically been handling requests, grinding stumps, but very little heavy pruning since the crew is a two-man crew at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Be replaced getting that third person here shortly. As far as disease and pests, the only two that we really need to discuss is the emerald ash borer. We continue to treat the street trees and are having really good success with that. If we've lost more than 2 or 3 ash trees, street tree ash trees, that would be a lot. The parkland, we haven't treated ash in the parkland, and at this point, we're going to lose all of them. They'll be dead. If they're not dead now, they'll be dead shortly.
Yeah.
It's a brutal insect. As far as lanternfly goes, it's a nuisance, not affecting any of the shade trees.
Okay.
All I have.
Tim,
All right.
This is Jeff. On the ash trees in the park, when you look at the top of the hill above the baseball diamond, I mean, there are a lot of ash trees in there that are, as you say, going to be dead within a short period of time, and they're going to probably pretty quickly, because the trees get brittle, create a hazard. I think the borough is going to have to come up with some kind of a plan to attack that, because you get a lot of people walking through there, particularly on windy days. We could have
I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Oh no, I agree with you. It's a problem statewide on highways and parks.
Yeah.
Golf. There'll be ash trees falling down for the next 20 years. And yeah, we will need to address that, because it's a concern. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the school district took out a whole line of trees when they put in that new fence up from Boscov's house up to the top of that hill.
Mm-hmm.
They must have taken 5 or 6 out of there, so that's good. But yeah, it will be a concern.
What about burning them? Have a mass cutting of them and either chip them or burn them or get rid of them.
That's what we would do. Chip them, basically cut them and chip them, but it's a process.
Sure, takes people. And so far, you haven't any that died that the borough inoculated?
I'm not positive if we lost, like I say, if we lost any, it would be
the last meeting when we were all together, which was over a year ago, I think it was Mark that said that so far none had died that the borough had inoculated.
That could be true. That's what I'm saying. We've had 99 to 100% effectiveness with that treatment.
Well, that's terrific. Is there anybody else that wants to make a comment on that? Okay.
Nat, we have a guest who would like to speak about the Weed Wrangler program.
Okay. Well, let us get through new business and old business, and then we'll open it up. Okay?
Okay.
All right, old business. Hearing none, we'll open it to new business in the Purple Martin House.
Nat, this is Dan Macrina, the new director of Parks and Recreation. That Weed Wrangle program is actually on your agenda. It's number 6.
Yeah.
It's actually before this.
Okay, on mine, that's winter and spring plans.
No, it is number 6.
Well, anyway, let's go into that. Who is here as their spokesman?
Lucy Cairns.
Okay.
So I want to thank you all for giving me a little time to speak to you today about a problem I've observed in the park and a program that I believe can be part of the solution. I'm a recently retired physician. I've lived in the borough for over 20 years. I've used the park regularly. I particularly enjoy the bird life that it attracts. I'm an active member of the Mangle Natural History Society and the Baird Ornithological Club. I've become more aware of the fact that it's the plants in an area that determine the insect life and therefore all other life forms that can thrive. I'm sure it's not news to any of you that non-native invasives reduce biodiversity, not just of the plant life, but all other life. And there are many other ill effects that come from the spread of invasive non-native plants. Now, I recognize that it's probably been many decades since the Wyomissing Park was populated mainly by so-called native plant species. However, over the last 5 or 10 years, I've observed the introduction of some new and really damaging non-native invasive plants that they've taken root. They're starting to spread. I haven't noticed any organized mitigation efforts, and this really concerns me. If something isn't changed, you know, in 10 years or maybe 20, but probably sooner, areas of the park will be unrecognizable. We won't have some of the birds we have now. It will create a very expensive problem to fix. Now, my hair really stood on end 5 or 6 years ago when I saw Japanese knotweed sprouting in the wet meadow. And Melissa, do you have my photo number 1? Whoops. Nope, that's okay. You're going back. Okay, so there's Japanese knotweed, the big clump in the wet meadow. You can see behind it cars parked in the gravel lot along Old Mill Road. A couple years before the knotweed popped up, 2 very large trees that must have been dead or dying had been removed along the path by the creek bank. And it was in this area of disturbance that knotweed got a foothold. You know, this plant basically forms dense stands 10 to 12 feet tall. The roots go down 10 feet or more. It spreads by seeds, by roots. And when it's along creek banks, if bits of the foliage break off and float downstream, they can root wherever they land. It's a major noxious weed. And I have brought it to the attention of park management, and every summer when I see it starting to flower, I've sent an email, asking that it be cut down to the ground. This last year that did not happen, unfortunately. This spring, there are new sprouts coming up. Now this patch is maybe 12, 15 feet across. There are new sprouts coming up all around it. It's going to double in size in the next year or so if we don't do something. And there's a second very small patch about 25 feet away that might be, might be something that could be eradicated if we act fast. So would you go to the next photo, number 2? Okay. This is the knotweed coming up in May of 2020. That's what it looks like when it's just starting to sprout up. And a year or so ago, would you go to photo number 3? I noticed another patch of knotweed. It's along the far bank of the creek. This is a view of the path leading down towards the creek from the west end around the park barn. And if you go to the next photo, through that little gap there and the foliage along the creek, there's the knotweed spreading on that side. So those are the knotweed infestations that have me investigating what can be done. What can be done. Well, in doing my online research, I came across an initiative started by a member of the Nashville, Tennessee Garden Club of America called Weed Wrangle. Her name's Casey McAllister, and one year she was giving a tour of one of Nashville's lovely public parks to some out-of-state garden club members and bemoaning the presence of so many bush honeysuckle, other non-native invasive plants in the park. And one of the visitors pointed out that as they had been taken through the surrounding neighborhoods, they'd seen many of the exact same plants being used in landscaping. So a light bulb went off in Casey's head about, a strategy for making invasive plant mitigation more effective, which is to create a community-wide collaborative event that would involve education and volunteer efforts on public and private lands to remove invasive plants and replace them with natives. And thus Weed Wrangle was born. In Nashville, their first event was 2015. It spread to every state in the Southeast, and it's spreading to other states as well. Their vision is to have it act as a national program. What you need first, Casey told me, is an expert in invasive plants and their mitigation. So I turned to Mike Slater, whom I know through the Bird Club and the Natural History Club. And Mike organized a presentation Casey gave over Zoom to over 40 interested parties in the state of Pennsylvania through his contacts in botany societies, conservation organizations, and there were some members of the Garden Club of America from Philadelphia who participated. And I have been in touch with Dan Macrina all along. He's fully aware of what I've been doing, what I hope to do. This year is not the year to try to create a big volunteer community-wide event, bringing everybody out together. And a Weed Wrangle event, the way it should happen, takes months of preparation. I was hoping to begin work this year towards having such an event next year. And this year, however, I would love to be able to have 1 or 2 small pilot projects. The first step is to document and map the invasive plants in the park. And Mike Slater has offered to help. Invasive plant experts use a cloud-based application, IMAP Invasives, for the purpose of tracking and monitoring mitigation efforts. And there's a smartphone app anybody can download, learn to use it, and help with this effort. And I think it would be entirely possible to do the mapping inventory this year. Have Mike Slater, if you're willing, put together, some suggested projects. You have to prioritize, obviously. You can only do so much. And perhaps we could have a small pilot project this year and start putting in place plans for a larger project next year. The Pennsylvania, the Park Maintenance Institute is interested in coordinating a statewide volunteer day in the parks, maybe next year, and that might include some weed wrangles. Of course, any work in the park could only be done, under the approval and supervision of the borough. What I think we would ask of the borough would be to have some help publicizing the event, recruiting volunteers when that time comes, disseminating educational materials, and possibly providing some of the needed equipment. And we need an arrangement for proper disposal of the removed plants. But I guess what I'm asking today is, would I have your approval to go ahead and work with Mike Slater to come back and submit a proposal for a small project or two that could be completed on one day at some point this year?
Well,
it sounds like a serious problem that could develop over time. We've got enough strains in the park system as it is, so if we can nip something in the bud, it seems like a healthy undertaking. I think it could. My first thought is for the places that you've identified. If this is a plant that after Dan takes a look at it as the parks director, and he's satisfied that it's a problem, we could certainly nip what you've identified down by the creek and just get the crew to go down there and cut it out to the extent we can to try and control it. And then I certainly wouldn't have any objection to some type of walk before you run type of an arrangement to have interested people try and take more interest in the park by controlling a problem. That sounds healthy to me.
Well, first of all, I agree with everything that she said, and I would suggest that everybody on the board read Bringing Nature Home by Douglas W. Tallamy and the Timber Press. And they're advocating everybody on their private property have at least 65% of the plants that grow on their property be native species, because that's what the bugs that are the fodder for the birds live on, those particular insects. And you won't have them if you don't have native trees on your property. But once again, the name of the book is Bringing Nature Home. It's by Douglas W. Tallamy from the Forest Press. And it's all about the joys that raising native plants on your property will come home to reward you. And I think it should be required reading for everybody on this board.
This year, the Garden Club of America in Nashville partnered with Doug Tallamy, or last year, I guess, the pandemic year, to promote his initiative, Homegrown National Park. So sort of weed wrangle at home, Homegrown National Park. Yeah, he's involved in weed wrangle.
Hey, this is Dan Macrina again. When I first started talking with Lucy via email a couple months ago, really in the beginning of the year, We talked about this being, a type of a volunteer event. To add to Mr. Stout's comment, we're fortunate to have the Parks and Recreation staff that we have, but I don't know that we can dedicate our staff, to take the time to go down there and, scout out all those weeds, remove them. We would gladly, be able to help out where we can, whether it's, providing some small tools or things like that, for the volunteers, but I'm not sure that I could dedicate staff to do that with all the other work they had to do. I am, personally, I fully support the volunteer aspect of it. The only thing I would ask from my standpoint is that, we're just notified. If it's just Miss Karen's and, one or two other people kind of doing a scout, we're okay with that, I would say. But yeah, just to be kept in the loop of what's going on. But if we can do it with volunteers as much as possible, that'd be great.
Well, that's certainly your call, Dan. I mean, that's fine with me. Whatever you think works best, and I can, the staff. The staff is very busy. There's no question about it. So yeah, volunteers, whatever. Sounds good.
Sure.
Well, I would be a volunteer if we set up a date to go in there with clippers and shovels and whatever is needed.
Well, I would ask, that give myself and Mike Slater a couple months to do the mapping and, for Mike to prioritize a small project or two. And then we would bring it to Dan Macrina and go from there.
Well, I would suggest our next meeting is July 28th.
Okay.
That you do all the legwork on getting the borough into the loop and have them, say this is a good thing. We need people. Maybe they can spread the word to get you more volunteers. But bring a plan to the July 28th meeting at 1 p.m.
Okay. I will do that.
Is there anybody that's opposed to that? Okay. All right. Was there anything under old business that anybody wanted to bring up? New business?
Yeah, there was no talk about the Centennial Circle plannings.
Barbara, this is Michelle again. I was actually going to chime in on that just to bring everyone on the Park and Shade Committee up to speed. When I was appointed assistant manager back in October, the Parks Department was put under my purview for responsibility. So one of the first things I did back in December and January was met with Dan and Dwayne to go on a walking tour of the entire parkland area. We looked at, everything from Centennial Circle to the Parkland property, the Parks Barns, the different areas of the creek, the planting strips at Penn and where State Hill Road ties into Wyomissing Boulevard, and then same thing over in Wyomissing Hills at State Hill Road and Cheltenham. Wellington. Sorry. And in looking at Centennial Circle, one of the things that Dwayne brought to Dan and my attention is that there's a lot of maintenance and upkeep, because the tulips are beautiful and everybody loves them, but that is a big time commitment to plant the tulips and then the pansies and then the mums. I reached out to Scott Miller, who is a registered landscape architect. I actually used to work with him at Stackhouse Bensinger. He's a borough resident. He also is on the borough's planning commission. And, I reached out to Scott and said, Could you maybe help us with looking at the plannings that are there and, maybe some things we could do a little bit differently just to cut back on some of the time intensity that's required of the Parks Department staff to maintain that area? So, Scott agreed. He met Dan, Dwayne, and I out there on a very cold and windy January day. And he is in the process of putting a suggested slightly modified planning plan together for us, just so we have some options for things we could do differently in the future if we chose to. When that plan is ready, I would definitely bring it before this group, just so you're kept in the loop as to what changes may be coming and why.
Could we circle the July 28th meeting as the day to kind of kick that off?
I can
mean,
certainly
have
request.
hopefully everybody together by then, since we've got herd immunity now.
I wouldn't go that far. That will necessarily be meeting in person by July, but I mean, I can certainly ask Scott to have, if possible, something to me by then. I know, he's doing this on a volunteer basis and obviously works a full-time job and is volunteering for other committees and boards. So I kind of left it at, no pressure on the borough's end as to when he gets that plan back to us, just whenever his time allows.
Well, I was just thinking, somebody once wisely said, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And it would be nice if we were all together and be able to look at it, what they come up with.
Oh, sure. I completely understand that.
And that could be circulated prior to our talking about it. That would be fine.
Correct.
That would be, okay.
We can definitely take care of that.
That sounds good, Michelle.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. That's always been, I thought, when you think of Wyomissing, the borough of Wyomissing, the Centennial Circle is the first thing I always think of. And of course, that was Kevin's baby. And does anybody know how Kevin's doing?
Dan and Dwayne talk to him pretty frequently.
Okay.
I haven't talked to him in a while, but he last time I spoke with him, he was doing great.
That's good. All right. Anybody have anything for the good of the order?
I voice an objection under the Sunshine Act. I was just looking over it right now. This is Adrian Jadik. The way this meeting is conducted under the Sunshine Act, it requires a quorum. And just like you said, Mr. Chairman, a picture is worth 100 words or whatever, 1,000 words. I object the fact that even yourself are calling in and have called in your vote. And although it's common practice to hear experts or testimonies over the phone, the members of the voting members of such commission should be present. And the intent of the law is that there is a quorum, and the law was not written during COVID, and the intent was that you should be here. And I'm sure for a commission that gathers once a year or twice a year, you could use a Zoom with video so we can see your face and your vote. It's not appropriate to join for the members to join via phone. I don't think that qualifies under, and I think at least we can call it that it stretches the law way too far.
Mr. Jadik, I can certainly talk that over with the borough solicitor, but there have been multiple committee and council meetings where members of the committee and council were unable to attend via Zoom and did call in, which is why a phone link is provided besides a website link.
Yes, a phone link is provided for members, and that's true. And there is also a big a big question about the attendance of the mayor, who has not been able, we call it technical difficulties, but let's not go there. I'm sure that the two gentlemen, that Mr. Stout and whoever is 4010, because we only have a phone number, are capable of joining with a video link. And it's
been accepted, sir, it's been accepted practice under the law of Pennsylvania that people can call in to public meetings.
Not the voting members, sir.
Actually, yes, they can, Mr. Jadik, under the current emergency declaration.
Okay, well, then I must be wrong. I appreciate your intervention.
Well, I think everything that we've done here, we're hoping that we can all get together on July 28th.
Well,
that would be fine.
Yeah.
We'll have a little bit longer meeting and get all this stuff done.
Michelle is right. We may not be able to do it because of COVID restrictions. So we'll reprise what we've done here today, which I agree with Michelle is perfectly acceptable under the law of Pennsylvania at this time.
Well, I've got an idea. Everybody saw the president last night, and he said that it's okay to be out there without a mask as long as it's outside. What about putting chairs out on the, I guess it's the south portico of the building, and have the meeting out there?
I think that would be fine.
Or we could meet at the playground on the pavilion.
I would suggest Happy Hollow, or an area that has a covered pavilion in case of inclement weather. But yes, as we get closer to July and reassess current regulations, guidelines, and restrictions, we can certainly discuss having an in-person meeting outside.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm game for whatever everybody decides is best.
I just have one other thing, Nat, and that is,
yes, sir.
The condominium birdhouse that went up about a year or so ago, much to the dismay of some people, spoiling the bucolic scene that presents itself from the barn. Maybe Dan can answer this. What's going on with this condominium birdhouse? And I see their projections, which look like some type of feeders that have been added to the thing, making it even more ugly than it already is.
That's actually under new business. That's the Purple Martin House. So, Mr. Chairman, if you want to move on to that, I can certainly. Yes. Okay. I'm not too certain of how that came to be. I believe that was donated. That
was my understanding also.
So that's a Purple Martin birdhouse. And I'll answer those what look like feeders underneath are gourds. I think they're to add for the residency capacity. And the point of this being on the, I'm sorry, I have my video on here. The point of this being on the agenda is that I'd say probably January of this year, a gentleman of the name Brock Ziegler reached out to me. He's a retired park ranger and was involved in a program that installed Purple Martin houses. He's very knowledgeable about them. He and his daughter volunteered to maintain them. There's a little bit of maintenance that goes with them, and we kind of gave him the initial okay to do that pending, the commission's approval. I'm not really sure of what the specifics are with the house, and like I said, how it came to be, but it's there. We have a volunteer who's willing to maintain it, and just wanted to get your approval, the committee's or the commission's approval on having those volunteers there.
Well, they always say if you want to keep the mosquito population down, you need lots of bats and you need lots of Purple Martins. And the two of them do a very good job at eradicating the mosquito problem. So,
have the houses been occupied by Purple Martins?
They
can't answer that.
They may have been, I'm not sure. Actually, there's these removable trays that are kind of put in straight, I don't know how you want to say it. They're reversed during the winter time and they're spun around in the summertime. They were the wrong size. There were a couple issues wrong with that. And Mr. Ziegler came in and cleaned them out and fixed them, and is working on that. So there should be, I believe he should be raising those up. That's on like a crank system, that should be raised up here, I believe soon, within the next couple of days. I can confirm with him, but that'll be raised up into the air.
My read is that, and talking to the crew that's out there and from walking in the park, is there's never been a purple martin even near that birdhouse. First of all, I think the openings for the purple martins are too small, because the purple martin is the largest of the swallows. I mean, they got a wingspan of about 18 inches. I mean, they're a bigger bird than the normal swallows we see in that area all the time.
Right, and I think that's because of the lack of maintenance of the house. So that's actually what he had told me, that there were a couple things that were done wrong with the house. There were some issues with the entrances, issues with the trays. We believe that's probably the reason why there weren't purple martins in the house at that, up to now.
Well, Dan, I don't understand the thing. He added those gourds. Those weren't on the house last year. Is that right?
Right. But I guess I don't have a whole ton of knowledge on them, but he said they're necessary. I can certainly see if he can attend the July meeting to fill you in a little more on it if you'd like.
Well, if he could just send us some information on it. My feeling is, look, if you can bring purple martins in, fine. But if we can't bring purple martins in, that thing is so, it looks like a monstrosity now. And I mean, thank God
looks like it should be in a trailer park.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really awful looking thing.
But they only live in colonies. There's no such thing as a single purple martin house.
But there are attractive purple martin houses. I mean, I've seen plenty of them, and this isn't one of them. So, I mean, maybe if you could spray paint it some different color, that would help. But or put it someplace where it's not so impinging upon the neighborhood, so to speak. But let's give him a shot. Let's see what happens. I mean, if he can bring purple martins in, he's a magician, in my opinion. But we let's not commit ourselves, please, long term, that thing's going to be around.
Sure. Like I said, I don't know how that came to be, but I believe that was something that maybe came through this committee last year or the year before. I'm not sure.
Yeah, what happened was the previous parks director, we got it as a donation from some person, and I don't know whether the person passed away and his family wanted to know whatever happened to the house, and the then parks director positioned the thing where it is, and we didn't really vote on the location initially. There was a vote later. Okay, it's there for the time being, and it was accepted on that basis. But I think it's something that needs to be looked at on an annual basis as to whether we should continue to maintain the thing.
Or change the location.
I agree. Barbara Reeser.
I agree too.
Okay, well, let's push it off for the.
Sorry, I was just going to say that's all I had to report on the purple martin house.
Well, that's great. Brings us up to date, Dan.
Is there any other new business that we need to discuss?
Yeah, the park bench donation program. I'm kind of, I want to say slowly working on a park bench donation program. Back in January or February, I got an email and a phone call from a resident who was asking if she could purchase a bench to donate to the borough in memory of a borough resident who had passed away. And at the time, I said, unfortunately, no, we don't have any such program like that. But it, kind of set off a light bulb in my head that our park benches and our picnic tables, the maintenance on those takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money. A lot of times our parks and recreation staff bring these benches in over the winter time and they fix them. And in 2 years or so, the wood from sitting in the elements all the time is rotting.
It warps.
Right. Not only that, it warps, it completely rots out. So again, then it becomes a liability issue for our residents, safety issue for our residents. So with working with General Recreation, who is our we tend to purchase a lot of playground equipment from that company. We started looking at how much it would cost for a park bench donation program. So if you see, might be difficult for some of you on the phone to see, and I can definitely have this kind of in your packet for the next meeting. But there's 2 types of benches that we could purchase. I believe the one with the back, kind of looks like a bench that you would see along a nice, like a Main Street corridor. I believe they're roughly $750. They can be purchased. They're made of aluminum, precast aluminum, and some composite material. They can be engraved. So if we decided we wanted to kind of make it a memorial bench, or if we wanted to extend it to, some sponsorships where some local businesses could sponsor the bench, I can tell you that it would definitely cut back on personnel and some cost that go along with maintaining the benches. And like I said, I kind of mentioned the picnic tables. We could also do that, but I just I wanted to get your permission to kind of continue to work on that program, to present it to both the commission and borough council. To be honest with you, it's kind of on the back burner at the moment, just because recreation events are starting to pick up, and that's mainly consuming my time. So as time permits, I'll work on this program and then present it to you when I can. I can't guarantee that I would be able to get it to you by the July meeting. But basically, like I said, for right now, I'm just looking for approval that we could move forward with something like this, or just if you guys are at all interested in this. I think it's a great possible a potential for a program that can be successful in the borough.
I can tell you that I think it's a great idea, and I can tell you the Wyomissing Playground desperately needs new benches.
I cut out.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My voice cut out in the middle of Dan's presentation. So are you saying that the benches would have plaques on them or not plaques?
This particular bench, if I remember correctly, can be engraved. So it looks like a regular park bench, and the wooden slats are a composite material. So they would just engrave. They would just do the engraving right into the composite material. If we pick a bench that this bench can have a regular like bronze or whatever kind of material plaque, but it would have to be something that we get from a local like trophy store, have them made there and then put them on. I think the better option is to have it just engraved into the composite material, and I think maintenance of these benches would definitely decrease. Maybe some minor cleaning every few years, but other than that, it's virtually no maintenance to them.
I would point out that a number of years ago, the issue of memorials in the parklands came up, and we as a committee voted that we were not going to have plaques, memorials, gravestones, if you will. There are a few of those in the parklands now, and this was, the thought here was that it's a parkland that should be kept in its natural shape. It's not a mausoleum, it's not a cemetery, and that's the reason that people were encouraged, if they were so inclined to establish a memorial, that it would be listed on the park barn down where the stable area used to be, to have their memorial set forth there. And maybe that isn't too prevalent a spot, but I do know I'm a member of an organization that was faced with the same problem. I mean, they didn't want plaques and memorials in natural settings, cluttering it up, if you will, creating the wrong atmosphere. Because while it's really special for one family, it's not that meaningful for other people. However, we could have a more visible place, i.e. a register at the park barn, you know, across the road where the flagpole is, and make it nice and have it undercover and recognize people, families who've made specific gifts to the parklands. I mean, the first would be Ferdinand Toone, who deeded all the land, and something like that, so that and recognize their gifts of a bench or whatever, but not have it here and there on benches throughout the park. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I do know that that was a position we took as a board a number of years ago. So maybe everybody needs to think about it. Dan needs to put some thoughts together as to a program that he might see, but I think we need to consider that.
So the thought process on that, first off, they're actually, if you think about it, in our parkland proper, so I meaning the park, the parkland surrounding the park barn, there really aren't that many benches in the parkland, in that section of the parkland. This would actually be more for parkland around the Stonehouse, parkland, or I should say playground property. And, you know, I don't think that, I mean, I should say, I know that we would get a handful of people that would donate benches without any kind of recognition on it. But I don't think the program would be successful unless we had some kind of recognition on there. And again, the biggest part is the maintenance and the cost of it, of those benches on a, you know, again, on every bench we have, every 2 years at least, we're doing a complete overhaul of it. So this is to be able to kind of cut that cost and that time suck, if you want to call it. So I don't think that people would purchase these benches without the recognition. And kind of, and I wasn't here. I don't know how that works, but I can tell you, I've gone around, like Michelle said, to several parts of the park, and there are, I mean, right now I can probably tell you for certain, there's at least 5 memorials out there in the parkland right now, if not more. So I mean, we do have them there.
Yeah, that was what prompted us to stop doing it, because we didn't want any more. Yeah, I mean, there's a stone as you come in from the Highlands parking lot for some gentlemen, and there's something over near the park barn for somebody else, and there's a plaque on a rock up by the sitting bench. And I just think that is a different situation. Maybe if you're talking about park benches around the swimming pool, around the stone house, and so forth.
Sure.
I guess the museum may have park benches that have memorials on them. I don't know. But I think everyone needs to think about it and decide how they feel about it. I'm frankly am not one for having a lot of plaques and so forth in a natural setting, because people come and people go, and you walk into the parklands and it's there, you're there to enjoy nature, not families' memorials.
Sure. Well, they do have them at the museum, but I can certainly, to kind of not drag this on for you guys, I can certainly come up with some plan, give you a couple different options. And like I said, I can't guarantee I'll get it to you in July, but I can come up with something and present a little more in-depth presentation to you, so that you guys can review ahead of time. So I won't, waste any more time there. Just wanted to kind of briefly present it there. So all good ideas, and I'll take that into consideration.
I'd like to throw a couple of things into that conversation. In the 70s, I was a township supervisor in Amity Township. We had the same problem with everybody wanting to put a memorial bench or table or whatever. And we worked up some specs and some reasoning behind it. It had to be historically significant, and everything had to be cast aluminum that could just be spray painted when it needed attention, rather than wood that would rot and decay and cause the township to have to spend a lot of money in maintenance. Just throwing that out there.
I sort of agree. This is Barbara. I sort of agree with Dan that I think we'll get more benches if they are donated. It wouldn't detract from me for sitting on a bench that is in memoriam for somebody, and I don't see the issue with that at all. I don't think it would, be a negative. All I have to say.
Anything else on that? All right. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 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 aye.
All right. Thank you for everybody that attended, either by Zoom or in person. And we will meet 1 o'clock, July 28th.
Okay.
See you then.